Y is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Speaking of things that you
Have forgotten.
have forgotten and completely like,
Yes.
have you heard about Bret Michaels? And no, not that Bret Michaels.
No, I have not.
So Bret Michaels has moved into Bret Michaels' home.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
There was a dog in Nebraska who had saved the life of a 1-month kitten who had
know this story. Yes, keep
flea
going.
anemia.
Yes.
The blood types matched, and this dog, which was named Bret Michaels, donated their blood to help this kitten survive, which it did. And now the story reached the other Bret Michaels,
Yes.
who has since adopted Bret Michaels.
Which, how do you not love both Bret Michaels for this story?
Exactly. And so now Bret Michaels has moved into Bret Michaels' home. And I hear Bret Michaels and Bret Michaels are very happy with Bret Michaels.
See, that is rock of love right there.
Yeah, it is. I just wanted to see how many times we could say Bret Michaels in a sentence.
Is Bret Michaels still going to be named Bret Michaels, or is Bret Michaels going to change Bret Michaels' name?
I don't know. I guess you'd really have to ask Bret Michaels. Not that Bret Michaels, the other Bret Michaels.
I don't know, but it's such a good story.
I know. Like when Bret Michaels take Bret Michaels out for a walk.
Yes.
Bret Michaels
Stop eating dog food, Bret Michaels.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Look at Bret Michaels just running around in the yard like a fool.
And I feel like OG Bret Michaels got kind of a bum rap on the tour last year.
Mm.
And I feel that this fully redeems him. I mean, I still always loved him, but
right. Because every rose had a thorn. What was the thing that kind of gave him the bum rap? Was it just that they were sharing a bill with the Crew and Def Leppard? It's a uphill climb.
I don't know. I don't know. That show was a great show. Everybody was incredible, especially Joan Jett, who everyone always forgets about from that lineup, but she was phenomenal. But I don't know. I feel like people just didn't think he was as up to snuff, or he was paunchy, or, kind of same
they didn't
things
think Bret Michaels was being the Bret Michaels that Bret Michaels could be.
No, but Bret Michaels is now the best Bret Michaels could be, because the best Bret Michaels ever just moved in with him.
With whom?
With Bret Michaels. Oh, we are not going to become Abbott and Costello. This is not where we go.
No, Bret Michaels, get off the sofa.
Right.
Think of all the things you can just yell at.
I know, it's
Bret
so
Michaels
great.
now.
I know, but it's a very sweet story.
It is. And I feel like Bret Michaels just continually has these stories, these redemption arcs where you're like,
this is my whole point. Yes.
Everyone forgets that he's a nice guy. Something terrible happens. He makes the most of it. He tries his best to overcome it. And everyone says, wow, look at Bret Michaels overcoming this thing.
And then they still go back to he's got that bandana. Is that real hair or fake hair? See, that's not nice.
No, leave Bret Michaels alone.
And by the way, you've never seen more impersonators than fake Bret Michaels at real Bret Michaels shows.
Now imagine the number of Bret Michaels that are going to be at a Bret Michaels show.
Oh, but if there are furry Bret Michaels with little doggy bandanas that
this is what I'm saying.
Poison on them. Oh, come on now.
So now if you're a Bret Michaels impersonator, you could have a Bret Michaels walk around with you. So it's 2 Bret Michaels.
Is the kitty's name going to be changed to Cece DeVille?
The AP story doesn't mention it, but I kind of think it has to be, right?
A kitty named Cece DeVille is unreal.
I mean, Kitty DeVille is pretty good too, but
Kitty DeVille is awesome. Or we could be like those people that spell things with the letters that sound make the same sound but aren't. So C could stand for Kitty Cat DeVille.
Right. So, I mean, it's a happy ending for Bret Michaels.
It is.
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
But how was Killers of the August Moon?
I know, it's so hard to pronounce.
Flower. Why do I keep saying August? Is August in the title?
No, it's just Flower.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
It's excellent. It moves very quickly for
All
how
right.
long it is.
Sure.
I think it's gonna be on Apple any day now, but
Oh,
it is
lovely.
definitely, obviously it's one that's good in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, for the first few hours of the film, the
Mm-hmm.
only very recognizable people in the film are Bobby and Leo.
Interesting.
And I found that distracting.
Hmm.
Because the woman who plays Leo's wife is phenomenal. I think she should win or be nominated at least.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were they're obviously always wonderful, but I did find them distracting because they stuck out. And they're so, no matter how talented they are also
It's
so
also
distinctively
with
who they
Robert De
are.
Niro and
And right.
Leo.
So, and there were moments where I felt like Leo was trying to channel Brando a little bit, which was also distracting.
Fair.
But then Jesse Plemons shows up and is amazing. Like his role is so great for him. And weirdly, when Jesse Plemons shows up, they're no longer just like, it's almost like there needed to be just because there's such a vast cast. And I love
Right.
that there's so many Native Americans in it, and there's so many people who aren't super recognizable,
Right.
but they're so iconic. So then adding somebody else who it just sort of level set.
Yeah.
I also, but it's a beautiful story. It's told so well. The end is so cool.
Excellent.
And I don't want to spoil it, but it just takes this turn that you don't fully expect.
Mm-hmm.
And for a second, you're like, wait, what? But then it's just so, it's perfect. It's just perfect. And also I realized I really don't know my country musicians very well.
Mm.
Because like Sturgill Simpson's got a big part.
Mm-hmm. Jason
Few
Isbell.
people, yeah, no, didn't realize it was them.
Hmm. No one's
Sturgill, I
perfect.
kind of was like, that I know that dude. That's a famous country guy, but I don't know who he is. And
Which
then I
one?
looked it up. Sturgill.
Oh, Sturgill. Yeah.
Pete Yorn is in it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't recognize Pete Yorn from
He was
unless it
hard
was
to
20 years ago.
recognize.
Pete Yorn.
Yeah, no, none of us recognized it as him until I was looking up the other dudes. Jack White's in it.
He's
I
kind
could
of, yeah.
spot him anywhere, but yeah,
Excellent.
it's good. You have to see it because I want to have a fuller discussion, but you have to see it so I don't ruin things.
Yes, I am eager to do that.
And I definitely want to start wearing like blankets and shawls because they're just so beautiful.
Well, it's also cozy season.
It is cozy season.
Or as I believe you mentioned last year, cuffing season too. So
Indeed, it is indeed.
I think November 1st is when both cozy and cuffing season start
I
up.
think so.
As soon as the
Absolutely.
pumpkins
They
go
go
away.
hand in hand or
Yes.
body to body.
Yes. Now, this is a sort of revised and expanded version of a piece you had written earlier and expanded, and then also just graphically, it's a brand new treatment of everything.
It was interesting in that I originally wrote the book just to be a general interest informational book, and it was picked up by an academic publisher, which was very nice. So it was called Lost in the Dark, and it had its little run, and then I was lucky enough to have another publishing company come along and say, let's do it again, but with pictures. So I was able to add a chapter to the end to kind of update it for those purposes, and then we were off to the races.
And how much input were you able to provide to the visuals, or did they just surprise you with everything, surprise and delight, because it is beautiful?
What they did was they inserted the photos and then sent me a PDF basically and asked me to sign off on them. And there were some cases where there were similar images that were too close to each other. And there were some images that I thought were too graphic. So I asked them to remove them if they could, which they did, which was nice.
Yeah, you don't want to frighten people. I get it. Where and when did you get into horror? What's your thing in the genre that you really, really love?
I think that it really started for me as a little kid. There was a local show in our town on television called Creature Features, and we would on every Saturday night at 10 o'clock, we would sit down in front of the fabulous television set and watch Creature Features. And so got schooled on all the classics that way. That was a really great introduction to it. And then just continued to be a horror aficionado.
Yeah, I feel like every region has their own version of Creature Features.
Yes.
Obviously, you've got Joe Bob and Elvira and Svengoolie and
Svengoolie, right?
But it's really one of the things I think that you miss with regional television is that sort of local guide, especially to horror, to take your hand and lead you through that world. And it's interesting too, you really cover a lot of stuff on this book. There were times that I was looking through it and reading it going like, oh, I bet he doesn't touch on this thing. And then I go and I see your top 5 Mario Bava films. I'm like, okay, you've done your work.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
is there anything that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Is there anything, because obviously horror is such a broad genre. Is there any particular director or style or film that is the one that's closest to your heart? Maybe it's not the best, but it's the best to you because it's closest to your heart.
I think I was really lucky because I grew up right at the right time to see John Carpenter films. And for me, John Carpenter is like the John Ford of horror movies.
Yeah,
he just has an absolute complete grasp. Even his stuff that's weird, like the Ghosts of Mars, is still fascinating to look at. So I love him. Love Bob Clark, who did The Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. I'm a huge Val Lewton fan of all those Val Lewton films from the 40s. So there's quite a lot to get excited about. I was giving out my top 10 lists on social media this week, and I was like, oh, I should see that again.
It's funny how that even just going through your book inspired me to go back and see. And I realized, which was so crazy, that I had never seen the first Friday the 13th. I'd seen all the others, but I had never, and watching it, I couldn't believe I'd never seen it. But it was exactly just going back and discovering it.
What do you make of the new horror films coming out? There's we went through the era of the torture porn, and now whatever this new sort of rehashing of some of them. What do you make of the new Exorcist movie? I guess that's the long way of asking that question.
Sure. I think the most recent thing that could be defined as a genre inside of horror is what's called post-horror, which is mature films with complex characters and interesting plot lines that happen to be horror movies. And they also call it elevated horror or legitimate horror. They're always trying to legitimize horror in some way or another, but they don't have very much luck with that. And these post-horror films are really fascinating. Films like A Dark Song from 2016, which is a great story about people trying to get in touch with spirits in the other world. Personal Shopper, about a person who's psychic. A Ghost Story, which is a ghost story. The lead actor spends the whole film under a sheet. It's very interesting. Somehow they pull it off. So the post-horror has really been the biggest new genre. I don't think it's going to catch on. I think I've seen Talk to Me and The Nun 2 and all that, and it seems like the regular standard fare to me. It is true that they are trying to reboot successful franchises. I think they're doing that everywhere in every genre of film. Certainly. So it's interesting to see them try to reboot things for the umpteenth time, which I think there's a special page in my book where it shows how many times they've gone back to the well with various horror film projects. And you think of things like, in terms of franchising, the Amityville horror films, there are 23 of them now. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's a lot of houses.
Yeah.
That's a lot to get out of one house.
Right. A lot of people making bad real estate decisions in that franchise.
Yeah.
So the local appraiser's got to be cleaning up.
Yeah, for sure.
And the inspection guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
That's the one who needs the movie.
Right.
The home
That's
inspector.
True.
I'm just fascinated. The whole thing, it's interesting. And I feel like I go through periods of horror where I'm sort of like into a bunch of this and try to watch a bunch of stuff and then, kind of move on to something else, and I always come back to it. There's always something that is fascinating. And when we're talking about the different genres, the slasher films, I feel like especially there's a certain low budgetness to all of it. That's sort of, I feel like people are now appreciating the camp of it. Do you think that's the case? Do you think there's always an element of camp in the horror, or that there's sort of an ironic appreciation of some of this stuff? I just finished watching Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge, which I don't know if you've seen it. I don't want to give everything
No.
away, but read the title of the film and you know how it ends. But do you think there is that element of sort of a appreciation? Is it something specific to the horror genre that fans are appreciating stuff that perhaps might not be what anybody would label as quote unquote good?
Well, it's kind of a question of fan service, and it's the idea that if you are doing a horror product, you have to deliver on your statement of intent. It must be scary if it's to be a horror film at all. And it's interesting to watch and see these various attempts. And I think that there is a lot of kind of winking at the camera sometimes, because we've just been so inundated with horror. People are very aware of all the tropes and the memes that there are. And so we look for that, and we kind of hang our stories on that, I think.
Well, I feel like I've always loved a good camp, right? I mean, but I do feel sometimes now there's too much forced camp. Like, I feel like people are trying to be campy, and then it doesn't land for me.
Right. It could, people get too exaggerated and they let you in on the joke. Yeah, it's when you take it perfectly seriously on screen it's funny. I mean, Young Frankenstein, we've all seen like the gag reel from Young Frankenstein where they just couldn't hold it together. So through some supreme effort, they deadpan their way through it, and that's what makes it funny.
Absolutely, every time.
And there's something about the horror fan base. I feel like they are, in one ways, unforgiving, where if the kills aren't well done, if the horror isn't well done, if something about the film is not perfect, they will tear it,
slaughter you.
They will kill you.
They will
but
get
at the
into your
same
nightmares.
point, yes, but there's also an appreciation and a love for these films that really not every genre has. Why do you think it is that horror, which seemingly would be the most repulsive, by which, to me, pushing away an audience or a fan base, that people are so drawn to these films and keep coming back to them and really have a special resonance with them?
I think it's all about overcoming fear, really. I think you go into a darkened place with a bunch of other people, hopefully a bunch of other people, and you submit yourself to an experience in the dark that scares you, that challenges you to watch, to not look away, to not flinch, to not scream. And maybe you do scream, but then you exit the film and you've had your catharsis. You've faced your fears and you've overcome them. And I think that's the basic appeal to it. I mean, we used to dare each other as teenagers to go see a certain horror films because we were like, you can't handle it. So you had to prove yourself.
Right.
So I think the fans are extremely valuable in that they keep kind of the third rail live with current. They have certain demands about what a film should be like, and I think that they respond in a way to that, not as much as, say, the fans of Marvel or DC kind of dictate the way those films come out, but there's still a strong undercurrent of that in horror. So I think we look for redemption.
And it's also interesting. I feel like I've seen a lot recently where certainly the gay community, but also the trans community, sort of a group of people, LGBTQ, sort of people who have traditionally been sort of labeled as other, finding something in this genre to really latch onto and really have it mean something special to them. Do you think that's always been in these films, that sort of appeal to the outsider?
Absolutely. I mean, you can go back to Todd Browning's Freaks, and you can move forward to things where there's LGBTQ identification, like the Babadook and Megan. And I think that there's coded language in a lot of these films, that there's a critique of normality that you can get away with in a horror film that you can't with say an Oscar-winning drama or a quote unquote serious film. Being in this kind of junky ghetto genre gives horror the ability to do things that are very interesting intellectually, as long as they stick to a basic formula and provide basic screams and upsets. They're pretty much allowed to make any kind of statement they want to. I mean, I thought the most frightening recent horror film that I've seen are the Purge movies. They strike me as something that could very easily happen in real life. So it's very interesting in that way.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting too, because again, it's so insanely broad. I like that. I'm really drawn to the clever, the ones that can happen in real life 1000%. The Strangers to this day is the scariest movie I've ever seen in my mind. It's just terrifying. And even just the fact that the house wasn't scary. I mean, it was ugly, but it wasn't. It's terrifying. But then Ready or Not is also one of my favorite recent films. I think that one is brilliant too. It's so clever.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
But the torture porn I can't deal with.
No. It's too bad. It's an unfortunate, it's kind of a weird thing that only strange people enjoy.
Yeah, but there are a lot of people who enjoy it.
Is that, I mean, because horror covers such a wide, that genre of horror covers so many different things. Is there one that you're just like, this is a hold my nose and get through this chapter?
I'm kind of allergic to zombies. I'm not really crazy about zombies. And I think that's in part because they really morphed from one thing to another throughout their history. I mean, they started off as the dead enslaved, and they've turned into kind of an alternative race of zombie humans that are not only much more threatening, but very intelligent, and most disconcertingly of all, very fast on their feet. I was so used to zombie. I can easily outrace an old zombie. I cannot outrace a new zombie.
That's true.
I was going to ask when that departure came for you.
So I just dug into the zombie chapter. I leaned into it as hard as I could and just went for it. And I think I found more appreciation for it as I went through it.
Was it 28 Days Later that had the first fast zombies?
Yes, either that or World War Z. But I think 28 Days Later was first.
I think so too.
So is it a zombie at any speed?
Zombies at any speed. If you have a nice slow one, that would be nice.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. So of the directors that are kind of hailed as the masters of the form, you mentioned Val Lewton. You've got, your Romeros, your Carpenters, your Bavas, Argentos, what have you. Is there any director or filmmaker in this genre that you really feel like people have been sleeping on and haven't completely appreciated what they've been doing? I mean, Jordan Peele seems to be the most recent that people have gone, this guy gets
Jordan
it. Knows what he's
Peele,
doing.
I think it's Ty West who did Triple X.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's quite an interesting director. That was the first of 3 films on the same subject, and I'm waiting for the last film to come out sometime this year. I think he's very underestimated as a director. Gosh, who else? James Wan. James Wan was kind of moving from doing Insidious and into doing mainstream films, which is interesting. And I don't see a lot of that horror sensibility leaking into his mainstream films, which I think is interesting. But obviously a very accomplished guy.
Do you think horror still has that kind of ghettoization of filmmakers? There's the whole list of people who started off in the genre and then moved to, quote unquote, legitimate cinema and seem like they never will go back because that's not doesn't have the same cachet. Do you think it's still has that sort of that split in it?
Oh, very much so. I think studios look very much at horror films as cash cows. They're extremely cheap to make, mostly. they don't require a lot of prep time or much infrastructure to create. So I think that it still has that ability to make that happen.
Yeah.
Do you still watch horror for fun, or do you always look at it clinically?
Oh yeah, I went to the drive-in. We have one drive-in left in Denver, and I did in fact see The Nun too. So that was a great experience.
Excellent.
Oh, we watched. Oh, that's right. I'm told by my wife. We watched Suspiria last night. I forgot about that.
Oh, the new one or
The original one.
oh,
I did
Nice.
have to see. I did have to watch the new one too. Unfortunately.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been looking for your list. What were some of the ones you have as the must see? Oh wait, here we go. Your top 10 films of the teens. That's the Devil, John. We Are What We Are. Crimson Peak, Green Room. Oh, I forgot about Green Room. You put The Shape of Water
Yeah,
as
that's the
horror.
great thing about horror is there's that people, you can look at a list and people go, yeah, that's right. There's this
Mhm.
wonderful kinship.
It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it's how often, I mean, obviously you said you went back to Suspiria, but do you like seeking out the new stuff? Do you like tracking this down? Are you sort of an always like let's go back to the classics and kind of
Right. Well, I like to pursue the new ones that come out, and I I honestly see like 3 or 4 films a day. So I'm always mixing it up and doing lots of different intermixtures of genres. It's if you saw my reading list, watching list, you'd think I was nuts. But the question being, I'm sorry.
if you go back and rewatch stuff, or if you just it's sort of a well, what else is there?
Yeah. I would say probably I would actively pursue it. What I really want to pursue would be the horror films of societies where we don't think there are any horror films. Like you don't hear many Russian horror films or African horror films. And I figured they must be creating them somehow. They must be making them and screening them. They're just not making it out of the local film economy to get to us. They haven't produced anything that we've felt was worthy of being ripped off, like all the Japanese horror of the 90s.
Right. Have you found anything from those areas of the world?
I have not. I think I would have to physically go there and hang out in there and have a translator and find out what the hell's going on with their horror film.
That would be fast because it's so interesting too to see what each region of the world brings to the genre. I'm a sucker
Right.
for a good giallo film. Maybe it's something about guys with 70s mustaches and turtlenecks that I really where they're presented as like sex symbols. It's a weird thing,
Right.
but it
Yeah.
works in a lot of those films. What is there something that I mean, America has always been sort of a melting pot of different cultures and people. Are there any elements of the horror film genre that is a purely American creation that we don't see from other lands?
Oh, well, I really think we did the slasher film. I don't see that happening in other world cinema, and America just kind of comes up with that. Peculiarly American. I would say, unfortunately, I think of torture porn as being an American creation.
Yeah.
Gosh, what else? Well, really, the U.S. and England had the market cornered when it came to science fiction horror in the 1950s. So there was that. Gosh, I'm trying to think of some more. Oh, the psycho viddy genre, whatever happened to Baby Jane and
Yeah.
Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, the crazy old lady movies. Those are uniquely American.
Lady in the Cage.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so interesting. I feel like something about horror, it's such a personal thing that people, that any conversation when we've talked with other actors or writers on the subject, it always comes back to basically just trading lists of movies, that there's something very, very personal about it, where it's that you want to share what you've seen. Have you seen that? That just, I feel like you don't see in a lot of other genres. You don't see people doing this with musicals.
True. That's very true. And
Which is,
I think that it's kind of that bonding together of people who feel like they're going to be looked down upon for their love of horror. And I think so it's kind of a defensive reaction
mhm.
that, oh, you despise this, well, I'll clutch it ever tighter to me type of way of looking at things.
So I should not be ashamed to say how much I loved The Hand, the Michael Caine Oliver
Oh,
Stone.
absolutely. Early Oliver Stone.
Yeah. Great cameo from him in that.
That's right. That's right.
For sure.
The crazy guy walking down the street.
Yeah.
All good cameos are.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I don't have questions. I just like, as far as, again, a celebration of the genre, like this book does such a good job of that, and
Thank
really
you.
having you be like, oh, I got to see this. I have to see this thing.
Take this back out.
And all I want to do is just be like, well, have you seen this one? Have you heard of this person?
Right.
Why didn't you cover this one?
Right.
Which I mean is the ultimate compliment of like, it gets your mind racing, and all the weird Jess Franco films and other stuff where I'm like, oh, did you see this thing? What do you make of this? And it's interesting too, the films that you include on the list that I guess Peeping Tom is a horror film.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, he is a serial killer. He does use a blade to kill with, so he's a kind of a proto slasher.
Right.
I get it. So here's the one that we've talked about on the show that you must have an opinion on. It does not show up in the book. I checked the index.
Okay.
Devil's Reign.
The Devil's Reign. Oh my God, with Ernest Borgnine and John Travolta.
Yes, and Anton LaVey in his only screen appearance.
Anton LaVey. Oh my God, Anton LaVey. Was that a TV movie? That wasn't a.
It was not. It was.
It feels like one though, but it wasn't.
It looks like a TV
Heidi,
movie.
Hush your mouth. Classic sim. Shatner post Star Trek the series pre films. I believe Tom Skerritt's in it.
Everybody's in it.
Oh yeah, it's a free for all.
I was doing a bit of research to try to figure out if that is the film that they made the Shatner mask, which then became Michael Myers. I could not find anything linking them, but I feel like there's got to be a connection because there's so much face melting in that film.
That's yes. When you get the Devil's Reign, it pours, it thunders.
Exactly.
It does. Does it all.
Horror Unmasked, A History of Terror from Nosferatu to Nope by Brad Weissman is available right now wherever you get your books from Becker and Mayer Books. For more information and to see what else Brad is up to, check out his website, Brad Weissman, that's WEISMANN.com.
Why the Podcast is produced by the Professional Production Company. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts because we're shallow and need constant validation. For more information, you can check out our website, whythepodcast.com. And like everyone else, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Today's show was recorded and produced by Heidi Hedquist and myself from our world headquarters, located on the second floor of the professional office building, centrally located downtown. Our reluctant executive producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thanks for joining us. Flash, we're coming home.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?